Mr. Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. I rise on behalf of Labour to register our support for the sentiments that the Minister has just made in terms of New Zealand having a natural heritage and values within our conservation estate and indeed across our country that should be protected. We'll support this bill going to Select Committee and we will expect a thorough investigation because, Minister, as you rightly point out, as powers are expanded for dock rangers to be able to carry out their duties in this modern age, getting the balance right between the powers of search, seizure and arrest with regards to the ability to enforce these particular powers are a matter that I think the Select Committee will want to spend some time on. Minister, you raised a number of reasons as to why the modernisation of the search, seizure and arrest powers are required, and indeed I wanted to comment on a couple of them. Firstly, with regards to the issue of international dealers and smuggling. I'm sure that when the Select Committee hears some of the specific reasons for expanding powers of dock rangers, they will want to look at some of the overlapping ways in which common agencies with a common interest will need to collaborate. Some of that is already happening but could be better improved, and indeed, Minister, you highlighted that. The way in which customs officers at the border want to surveil those who have been involved in international smuggling of wildlife species, I think is an area that is of interest when you're looking at cooperating information, but also roles and responsibilities between dock rangers and customs officers. Also, it's of some interest, I think, to the Select Committee to look at the way in which these provisions have been covered in the Act. There are a number of things which will require dock rangers to make a decision, make a judgment, based on discretion, based on what they reasonably believe is important information that could be used as evidence of offending or offending about to take place, but also the practicalities of how they assess whether or not to go the next step and take reasonable steps to stop and keep stock for a period as defined in the bill, a person of interest. And that requires a level of judgment. It's my concern, Minister, that when dock rangers or those authorised to carry out these extra powers make a decision, giving some context around that will be very important, because enforcement at the end of the day doesn't exist in a vacuum. We have dock rangers who operate in isolation, often in areas that are well away from a lot of the public, and we need to be assured, I think, at the Select Committee level that they're able to carry out these particular tasks with some level of safety and assurance. Just today up the Kapiti coast, a young girl, 21, working at a mall was trying to stop a shoplifter and got knocked over, you know. And in the conservation estate, if you've got people who are looking to smuggle species for a huge amount of money, there is a safety element as well. So this is where the balance of enforcement coupled with the extension of powers is a matter legitimately that the Select Committee should be looking at. So my question at this first reading will be around how the powers will work in practice, how these matters of judgment will be made in the context for taking reasonable steps to stop people of interest, the point at which they're making the assessment. Minister, you made a comment about requiring information to be gained from a person of interest, like their date of birth and their details and things like that. Well, quite frankly, if they're on the run and on the hop and you're chasing them, you're not going to be able to inform them beforehand. These are some of the practical things that I think we need to sift through at the Select Committee to give a better context to how the intention of these powers will operate in practice and in reality. But they are important because, for example, If a person has come from overseas with the express intent to smuggle species of a biodiversity interest to them, which can fetch quite a handsome sum on the black market, getting, for example, their name, their address, their passport could be really something very useful, and detaining them until prosecution would be entirely justified. But again, we will have to pursue these types of questions with some context around practical examples. So this will mean the Select Committee will have to delve back into some of these cases that have led to prosecution to get the legislation working in a way that it is intended to. And it might mean some changes, but again, we should leave the Select Committee to do its job and report back at the second stage of the bill around those particular interests. Minister, there are two specific issues which I've commented on. One, in extending powers, are they able to be enforced? And there is a real concern that Labor has about the ability of DOC to enforce the expansion of powers granted to them to be able to conduct their role when actually the budget of DOC has not been substantially increased, and positions that have been changed through the restructure have not been backfilled. So we're making we are making some comment on the fact that DOC are underfunded to carry out their current roles. We're expanding their roles. Are they able to practically enforce the extension of powers that they've been given? You've commented on that, Minister. Again, I raise this out of courtesy because it will be a matter to ask questions about when we get to the Select Committee. There are also some aspects of the bill which I considered in this first reading which would be of interest for us to think about its intent. And that's really the way in which, the point at which a decision is made about whether or not to seize or make an arrest based on an action at a particular point in time, and the information available to the DOC Ranger. Say, for example, if the DOC Ranger understands that hunting is being undertaken in a particular area, and it's after the fact that they have been passed on information, which then might lead to subsequent actions of DOC Rangers, what balance of interest is, or what weight is given to the evidence provided to the DOC Ranger in order for them to make a decision? So, for example, stopping someone who has gone out 3 days previous on a hunting trip, and then they're making their way home, and the DOC Ranger has been given information to then stop them quite away from the place where an activity has been conducted of an illegal nature. And this is a matter I know that the Minister is well aware of, and if this is intended to improve that situation, maybe it's something that the Select Committee might put its mind to. So with that said, the extension of powers does modernise the ability of DOC Rangers to carry out an extended range of roles. Will it be able to be enforced practically? And will the determination of the extension of powers meet the practical way in which DOC Rangers carry out their tasks? In a nutshell, it seems to me those are the issues for the Select Committee to address when the matter gets to the Local Government and Environment Select Committee.
I call